So this whole thing of 107 million users, right, from these key points from the AMA from the other day. 107 million users should be a walk in the park. I couldn't agree more with that statement. Um, you know, we're all trying to be conservative with our price predictions. I'm not going to do it anymore. I mean, you know how many times people say in the comments on recorded videos or recorded video sections like, Max, what's your price prediction? I've been consistent with it. I think at least $1 by the end of 2025. I could be wrong. I mean, all sorts of crazy things could happen, but I'd rather go with something like that than do something like just absolutely crazy. And I've done crazy stuff, right, with the $17 KPIs, but I at least try to give you guys something to back up some of those statements. Like, hey, here's the research. You know, this is why this could be a possibility, and so on, right? But I want to come back to reality about this. And while we're all excited that Jasmine is really doing well, in light of some people complain about the AMA, I'm not gonna get to the point where I'm like, yeah, to the moon overnight. No, not overnight, right? This is not a sprint, or not a sprint. This is definitely not a sprint. It's a marathon, right? But this part where it says data is valued between 500 and 1,000 per user, excuse me, annually. Now, some people will say, like, well, where do they pull this from? They just pull that out of, what? No, not really. And when you look more into it, you will see this report from, like I said, I think was it McKinney? Yeah. McKinsey. I said McKinney. McKinsey, right? Very well known. Sometimes there's another one that's called McKinney, and sometimes they mix up the names. But this report from 2015 even to present, right? And you'll see some of the dates, is so incredibly bullish. And it's just in perfect correlation of what's going on, especially when it comes to Jasmine. So I want to get in more into this. I know it's kind of a big spiel to get into, but we're going to talk about this for a second. And some of these other things, Haro not happy with recent price action. Is he happy now? Because we did see some price action, right? 2024 roadmap. We'll see what happens with that. And if anything, I'm going to do like a compare and contrast 2023 with 2024. But some of these other things, Jasmine's coin price should be driven by data owned and PDL. So the main key factors of why hopefully you're here tonight and paying attention is this statement, and then also about this whole thing about the data that's valued. That is what we're going to focus on tonight with some actual research to get into and why it's important. So for one, let's take you over to here. And Jesse, who's Keeping It Real Finance, right? KII Finance. I asked him on yesterday's live stream, the AMA response. And also Rob was there too, because obviously he's hosting. This whole thing of like, hey, did anybody see this in regards to what was published 3 days ago from the Medium? No, not a lot of people paid attention to this because, right, it's kind of like we get tunnel vision. We're all guilty of it. The eyes were on the AMA. But on the Medium, about roughly 3-4 days ago now, right? Jasmine Secure PC, like it says, a strong security solution using blockchain, begins working with Kinro no Shishi. I know it sounds crazy. Cloud-based attendance management system. Talks about this whole thing of overtime. Talks about this whole thing of, for instance, creating workflows and making things where you have this thing that can track, kind of like who's goofing off. You know what I mean? It's like, what are people doing at work? Especially like during work time and after breaks and stuff like that. And that data is crucial to, let's face it, these types of businesses. And when I went more into this, it takes you to this site. And by the way, they're partnered up with Jasmy. Okay. It says line of labor, relieve your, your workflow, right? Gets more into this. Make every work style more efficient according to customer needs. Talks about, this installation of operation, maintenance. There's a lot to be mentioned here, right? And it's got like all these things that are here. Reason why the attendance management system is chosen. So businesses do want a lot better workflow. We know this. And for them to choose Jasmy, I think is a big deal, because here's the thing. In the past, we talked about Transcosmos, those data centers, I should say data centers, those call centers that literally use, for instance, some of Jasmy's utility, right? Like a PDL, and how we thought that was a big deal. But a lot of other people point out, well, we don't see any other examples. Here's another example. What happens when we get more and more examples? Now, some people point out, well, this is just a second example. Well, not exactly true. Pump the brakes on that for a bit. But they have all these features about, their business and the functionalities, and so on. And I thought that was, pretty well done. I mean, there's a lot to get into. This is not a deep dive about them, but when we go back, you will see some crucial things. And like it says, implementing company. Look at all these other companies. And when I look into some of these other companies, like Park Hyatt Tokyo, I'm thinking to myself, well, remember when Jasmy had partnered with other companies in travel? And they said they were going to use, for instance, Jasmy, um, you know, to pay for some of these things. And some people were like, that's a stretch. I mean, they're not going to fully use it. It's just an option. Some people point that out. But when you see all these companies, right, and this particular one, partnered up with Jasmy, you have to keep in mind that, as the saying goes, word of mouth will spread like wildfire. All it's going to take is that you're going to have Kinru, right, mentioning, yeah, we're very pleased with this workflow data management that Jasmy has going on, using a PDL to securely do things and so on, and being able to track, you know, data through the Internet of Things that we have even here at the office or whatever the case be. Oh, really? You like that? Yeah, it's great. You should look into it more. And then boom, a few of these start popping off. Then what about more of that adoption? Other particular Asian countries and companies popping off. That's why I wanted to show to you guys. Now I'm not gonna get more into this because there's too much to get into. But what I want to mention to you guys is a little bit more of why I'm paying attention to this specifically. And that's this right here. This is back to this comment, and this is from a pre-AMA answer. So again, before the AMA started, from Captain Jasmy. Give him a follow. We follow each other. Says the value of individuals' data is estimated to be around $500. Now we've seen it higher than that, right? And that's lowballing it. While this value may not be realized immediately, we anticipate it to be double in the future. We value the contribution of each individual and aim for a minimum reward of 500. These figures have been calculated considering future multipliers. What about actual more data? What about actual real numbers? Is Max going to reference the bat crazy $17 and some change 2026 KPI target? No, I'm not. But what I am going to show you guys is some more about this. And that is another one. Jasmy coin price forecast. What do you think personal data will be worth annually versus the number of PDL users, 107 million? And that's just lowballing 107 million. 107 million is a lot, don't get me wrong, but like they said, they should easily be able to do that. What about if it's like 500 million? Some people say, geez, that's how could it be that? Look at the greater picture of things. And if anything, again, back to the whole thing of KPI, I'm not going to mention about that tonight. I've done enough of those, right? I want to basically get into some of the nitty gritty here in a bit. And that is some of my own notes in regards to this, because I said to myself, we are talking about decentralized data marketplace, are we not? And the value of a decentralized data marketplace. So Jasmine, yes, had this recent AMA, and with this, this particular person who is Captain Jasmine or the next guy, you have to keep in mind this value of individual data being estimated around 500 and so on will grow much higher than that. It could be higher than the 1,000 that was mentioned, right? But at the same time, while this value may not be realized immediately, you got to keep in mind, like what he was saying, or Hara, the team, they anticipate to double and mature even more than that. And these figures have been calculating, considering like those multipliers. With that said, in regards to my notes and so on, Jasmine is looking to start that decentralized data marketplace, and it would be a major disruptor compared to centralized data marketplaces, your GAFAs, your Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, right? So if individualized data in Asia alone would be worth around 500 per annum, how much is centralized data currently worth with the tech giants of GAFA, right? I mean, I'd be wondering that. It's like, why just not talk about it? Well, there's a lot of things to consider and a lot of things to draw up in regards to just making conclusions to the whole thing. For one, here's the main points to consider. And here's some of the research, basically. Three main key things to consider in regards to this. So, data valuation, very, very complex process, right? Like some data is going to be worth more than other data, right? How do we know this? Well, healthcare data is probably going to be worth more than, little Jimmy John's, Fortnite skin in regards to data, right? I mean, that data is worth something, but apparently it's only worth enough to buy a $1 skin, right? Healthcare data is worth a tremendous amount more. And if anything, I mean, this is why I'm so gung ho about Filecoin, but that's another story, right? Because there's different data sets. But the value of personal data definitely does depend on various factors. And think about these factors for a second. Like I said, healthcare data is totally different, but it's the type, the quality, the quantity too. I mean, BTT, yeah, they're part of data, but that's a lot more of quantity over the quality of what? Filecoin type storage data, is it not? So it's not just the quality of the data, it's not just the quantity of the data, it's how it is used. That is crucial. And that is why I want to get into this outline a little bit more and why a little bit more deeper, because it is difficult to understand all this and assign a fixed monetary value to something as multifaceted as personal data or personal data lockers. Now, keep in mind, there's various different things that come involved in regards to estimating data and its value, and there's limitations to that. But some of the methods do focus on the cost of collecting and processing data, while others try to estimate revenue it generates for companies. But what if you have one in Japan that is going to pair with the local economies to be the enablers to contribute to what? The actual economies. And not just the local economies, but actual businesses, just like the one that we just mentioned from that Medium page. And what kind of challenges would it involve in regards to capturing all value of that data? Is Jasmine truly doing that, or are they just experimenting, like some people point out in regards to the AMA? Well, you draw your own conclusion, but from what I gathered, this all goes beyond something more bigger than anybody could possibly dream of. To be able to capture the full economic value of what companies derive from specifically user data is going to be absolutely game changer. And it often goes beyond just direct monetization through what? Advertising or even sales. Now, getting into the juicy part of this, and that is this. To provide you guys a definitive answer in regards to the question of the value of centralized data, particularly what GAFA does, we need to study some reports. And that is a particular one from McKinsey Global Institute, who did back in 2020, by the way, as we know, the whole thing of the pandemic, they estimated back then the data generated by an average internet user, listen to this, in US and even Europe, was worth $1,700 per year to tech companies. Tech companies. Isn't Jasmine trying to do the whole thing of being a tech company? Now, I'm going to share this with you on the screen, and this is going to back up everything that I've been mentioning for a while. And I know this is quite the deep dive. But basically speaking, what you see here, like it says, best surveillance system. Again, back, and you can look into it yourself. Go to mckinsey.com and /capabilities, or just type in like IoT research or just IoT, Internet of Things. But they had this report about implications for business in 2020. They stated best surveillance systems seamlessly combine data from traditional sources with newer data sets. I want you to think about this for a second. Japan was that country before COVID, okay, that was what? Pro cash. And since then, they have flipped, right? You know, it's not that they're flip floppers like politicians, but they flipped that narrative. They realize that in order to onboard this whole new system, you have to recognize the old traditional methods. True? Jesse and I talked about this last night briefly. We know it's true because what? JPY stablecoin. And I was glad I was able to pick Jesse's brain a little bit on that because I said, I've been talking about this for like over a year myself. And I know that he's been talking about it for a while too. The pairings of the Japanese yen denominated stablecoins with JASMY and how that's so game changer. And if you never grasp why that is so crucial, I'll just give you the quick gist. What have you seen when it comes to your stellars? USDC, right? Circle. What have you seen in regards to your tethers, right? USDT, literally paired with like everything. What about Japan having, for instance, JPY stablecoin or other particular stablecoin pairings, again, with JASMY? Pairings create volume, and those pairings are the enablers. So if you have this, like it says from this report, best surveillance system to seamlessly combine data from traditional sources with newer data sets, again, think about Web3 data sets, anonymized mobility tracking, JASMY's all over that like a fat kid on cake, right? We know this with WITS. We talked about this numerous times. We did the deep dive research, not just me, all of us as a community. Why do we look into that? Because it was crucial to understand that. They provide high level of detail and transparency around characteristics and location of those infected while protecting what? Individual privacy. They improve a design principle, incorporating new sources data, improving quality, reduce friction in the response time. And then here's this part. The best surveillance systems seamlessly combine data from traditional sources with newer data sets, such as anonymized mobility tracking, and do it in the near real time. Isn't JASMY trying to do that? You better believe they're trying to do that. So getting more further into this, look at this for a second. This is going to be the most amazing outline, and I'm not a guy that brags. I'm a humble person. But I saw this, I said to myself, God, isn't this wonderful? Because remember what we saw before? Did you see the whole thing that I did in regards to DFFT update and how crucial that was? If you haven't, at the end of this video, not on the live, but when it's chopped up on the recorded, you will see something where the little card points you in that direction. Watch that video if you haven't in regards to the DFFT update. You'll be caught up on the greater picture of this. Don't let some puppy dog fudder person FUD you out of future generational wealth. And yes, JASMY is part of that. It's not just one that's going to make you a little bit of money. If you understand the bigger picture, pay attention to this. IoT value. This is again from McKinsey. And look up McKinsey, one of the top ones out there when it comes to this type of research, right? Really excellent info. IoT value set to accelerate through 2030. Where and how to capture it. Think about that. Now, this is 2021, and I swear we'll get to some stuff in regards to 2023 and 2024 in a bit. But the new research then showed that Internet of Things offers significant economic value potential, particularly in standardized production settings. But companies must achieve, what does it say? Scale to capture it. And my God, what is JASMY trying to do right now? They're scaling up. Scaling up through what? Your layer 2 scaling solution with optimism. And they don't have to settle there. We already been there. We already done that. Through ISO TC 307 working groups for the further future, they can totally work with who? Quant. Because they already have those standards in place in Japan in the working groups to take this to the next level. But we understand the budget. And I'm not knocking on optimism, right? Even if you bought the native coin of optimism, you'd be way up. But the key is that statement. Those companies, to achieve this, to scale and to capture it. Think about it for a second. I'm going to take you to the actual article about this. This is really good stuff. So it says the Internet of Things catching up on accelerated opportunity. We're all trying to be part of this opportunity of JASMY, are we not? The Internet of Things, convergence of the digital and physical worlds has emerged as the fundamental trends underlying digital transformation of business and economy. From fitness trackers. I mean, come on. Have you not seen the ones out there? GMT, Fit5. There's other ones. I think Fit5 is the one that's on crypto.com app. But again, those are all part of IoT. All right. And think about this for a second. While those are pretty decent projects and done well, even in the crypto winter, all of those particular ones that we talked about, they do need to have what? A Web3 data storage. Who's going to help them get it done? Now, I'm not saying that all of them go to JASMY, but what I am saying is, even if it's just a small percentage of them choose to go that route, how big would that be? So getting more into this, look at this. All the way back in 2015, and think about when JASMY started. I think it was 2016 was its inception. And of course, then we saw the public offering, 2021 and so on. But back in 2015, McKinsey Global Institute, this is where all this research is coming from, published this research report entitled The Internet of Things, mapping the value beyond the hype. The value beyond the hype. You know, for people that don't understand why you should research anything, right? And say, well, you know, all it really is just a community of people pumping the coin. Do not understand, apparently in my eyes, two main things. I really wonder if they ever been part of a bull market in the past. I'm just going to throw that out. And I also think that they are looking at these particular coins with utility from what? A meme coin perspective. Because why else would they be talking like that? So beyond the hype, you don't have to hype anything. Even though it sounds like I'm hyped, I understand that. But you don't really have to hype anything that has solid utility, because the research speaks for itself. The utility speaks for itself. JASMY has multiple utility layers, more than a lot of things out there. I always talk about quant, like, wow, look at quant. You know, you have so many things, hundreds, thousands. When we really look at it, it's just like the plumbing of Web3. But this is not about quant. This is about JASMY, is it not? But this report analyzed the economic potential of IoT, Internet of Things, that could unleash through consideration of hundreds of use cases. Not a few use cases, like I said, hundreds of use cases, the physical settings in which they could be deployed. Now, 6 years later in that report, which was called Internet of Things, Catching Up to Accelerate Opportunity, they updated the analysis to estimate how much of that value, don't you love how I do this, how I tie everything in? And that's why I have an outline. I don't know if anybody recognizes. That's why I do an outline. Might take longer than average Joe Schmo, but it's an outline for a reason. Then analysis, to estimate how much of that value has been captured. Again, back to Captain JASMY with what he said. How the potential value of IoT could evolve in the coming decade. We are more into that decade. We're close to halfway to that decade. And by the time we get to the height of the bull market, in my opinion, late 2025, right? What kind of factors will be, evolving? What kind of factors will explain this whole thing of defining the Internet of Things? So this statement, the market has grown considerably in the intervening years, but not as fast as we expected back in 2015. Well, of course, totally different type of technology back then. IoT has faced headwinds related to change management, cost, talent, cybersecurity, and particularly enterprises. Think about everything Jasmine is involved with, whether it's enterprises, cybersecurity, especially cybersecurity. Come on, Jasmine stands out, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. Think about the whole point of a personal data locker. Now, this, I did play it the other night. Some of you guys saw it if you're part of that show with Rob and Jesse. I'm going to play it for you guys. Under 5 minutes. You have to listen to this part. If everything I mentioned to you tonight just went way over your head, listen to this, at least this part. If you appreciate the content, smash the like. I'm promising you it's going to get a little bit better here in a bit. Let's go ahead and play this. Here we go.
think business leaders can leverage their research in this report in two ways. One, hopefully it provides insight into where the market opportunities and where the direction of travel is around IoT for the subsectors and for the applications that are in focus for them. I think secondly, and perhaps even more importantly, is their ability to reflect on what the report tells us about adoption of individual use cases and in general across sectors, and where the organization in terms of capabilities, talent, technology needs to advance in order to be able to be successful.
When we looked at the value creation potential of IoT, we looked at it through a few different lenses. Through settings where IoT technology is ultimately deployed, but also in use cases or use case clusters of related activities. And when we looked at about 99 different combinations of settings and use cases, one of the things that we found most surprising was that the lion's share of the value was concentrated in 5% of those use case and setting clusters, primarily with regard to operations optimization, which was one of our major areas. It really speaks, I think, to where we're seeing real traction within the market and where we're seeing excitement from end users to deploy IoT technology and really start to deliver real value capture.
The thing I found most surprising was just how fast the home setting and consumer applications grew, largely as the result of these voice-automated assistants or voice-activated assistants in the home. Those have just grown tremendously. And then all of the IoT ecosystem within the home has continued to grow with it. That said, we still see lots of potential in B2B, but the surprising thing to me was just how much the adoption in the home setting had actually accelerated.
As we looked at the value creation potential looking forward towards 2030, we did see that these estimates were slightly lower than estimates from about 5 years ago. One of the reasons for this is that a lot of people are stuck in what we call pilot purgatory right now.
The biggest piece of that is how challenging it is actually to move things within large organizations, to have the enterprise change the way that it operates. Largely the technology is there in order to capture value, but actually it's all of those organizational factors, whether it's adoption, having the front line change the way that it operates, having the right incentives in place, all of those things are challenging. Now, that being said, we do see individual companies really racing ahead, being able to capture value at enterprise scale. But in order to capture the global value, a lot of organizations need to move. And that's where we find it is really hard work to do that. But we do see some companies accelerating ahead, and they are winning in the marketplace. We do see the strong potential for IoT continuing to accelerate and create value going forward. I mean, the number one thing is that value really is there. If we look at some of these leading companies that are winning in the marketplace, they are using IoT coupled with other technologies like analytics and AI in order to really capture value, whether it's on the top line or the bottom line around operational improvements. And so one of the reasons we believe it will continue to happen is because competition will require it to happen. When one company races ahead, and we know that digital technologies actually expand the range of performance between the best and the rest, everyone else will need to compete.
Looking forward towards 2030, we see even more reason for optimism given the deployment of 5G networks. Recent estimates forecast that about 60% of the world's population will be covered by 5G networks by 2026. These promise greater improvements in network speed, network latency, and network reliability that open up a broader set of use cases, particularly those related to video.
Did you find something really interesting with what he said there? By 2026. What did you also mention there for a bit? We'll play more about this, obviously. There's a few seconds left. So he said by 2026, and he also talked about the ones in regards to IoT creating like this, like data sets, and what was the other thing, value creation? Get back to the whole thing of Captain Jasmy and what he mentioned in regards to, the summary from the AMA. So, I mean, it speaks for itself. I mean, it's like the stars are aligning, for crying out loud. Let's play a little bit more about this. This is crazy stuff. I mean, when I saw it, I was like, you got to be kidding me. A little bit more.
And then finally, we really do see companies starting to address the challenges around scaling, really understanding that that's something that they need to do. And so for all those reasons, that large value that we analyze is possible out there, we really do think it will be captured over time. It won't be tomorrow, but it will be in the near to medium term.
Man, oh man. Think about what he says. The companies that are capturing scalability, and all this will not come overnight. It takes some time. Have we not been talking about this for a while? We have been talking about it for a while. All right. So let's come back into the frame. Let's also show you some more about this. Just a second. Let me load this up. Lots of things to click on, obviously. So earlier in this outline, I was talking about the whole thing of different data sets, understanding, there's obviously different types of data that's worth more than others. Let's talk about this for a second. Okay. What are some IoT applications? Well, some of you guys know this. You watch some of the, live shows, recorded content, you name it. But looking at some of these applications, in a nutshell, IoT applications occur in one of 9 specific settings. There's more, but those stand out. This one, I think, is the one you can't discount enough. And that's human health, or healthcare data. Devices can be attached to or inserted inside the human body, including wearable or ingestible devices. I know it sounds kind of gross. That monitor or maintain health and wellness, assist in managing diseases such as diabetes and more. Right. So that data in itself is going to be worth way more than, like I said, Jimmy John's little Fortnite skin that cost $1. That's a given. Talks about this whole thing of retail environments. And I also think this is crucial for understanding JASMY entering into finance democracy, which doesn't get mentioned enough. I try my best to, bring you guys to deep dives and stuff. But the retail environments, devices can be installed in stores, banks, restaurants, arenas, for crying out loud. Why mention arenas? Think about it. Did we forget about Sagan Tosu fan token in regards to soccer, right? That's worth mentioning. Self-checkout, extend in-store offers, optimize inventory, offices. We just gave that example earlier in regards to that particular one. What was it called again? Kinru, right? Kinru Shishi, or whatever it is. Perfect example of office management, office workflows, right? Get into this other thing, standardized production environments. Those settings, including manufacturing plants, hospitals, farms. You guys always hear me joke around about JASMY and the Rice Crop Consortium. Let's go. I mean, I joke about it, right? But that's a real thing. The Rice Crop Consortium is an actual real thing, and JASMY's partnered up with that, right? IoT applications often aim to gain operating efficiencies or optimize equipment use and inventory. I mean, I think of all the equipment that WITS provides, and to have that key partnership with JASMY is crucial. So there's a lot of other ones here, but another thing that really stood out, it's these two, and we'll get into the next part. Vehicles. IoT can help with condition-based maintenance, design, usage, analytics, cars and trucks. I mean, watch out for when Honda in the future does their, EV car, right, with Sony. I mean, come on. I mean, if you have former Sony executives, you have the Bitcoin of Japan, if you will. I mean, that right there is such a huge positive catalyst to have those connections right before all this stuff takes off, before 2030, in regards to JASMY. Because those IoT sensors and so on. I mean, again, Sony, Honda, look that up for yourself if you haven't seen it. We cover that in some of the deep dives. So this is all big. And of course, cities. How many times have you heard me talk about, Society 5.0 and these smart cities and so on? So it's all there. All definitely there. All definitely worth pointing out. Want to get into this as well. This is a little bit more from McKinsey. Okay. And why point this out before we get towards the end of this? Well, look what it says. This headline, transforming business models to achieve what, guys? Steady cash flows. Back to the whole thing of Kinru Shishi from the Medium article from JASMY 4 days ago. What did it mention specifically from that site? Office management workflows. And look at this for a second. Tech companies face ongoing pressure to generate more stable cash flows, maybe like Kinru Shishi and all those other companies that they're partnered with. As a result, many are considering shifting to a variety of service models that create a reliable stream of monthly income. This approach is being applied not only to infrastructure platforms and software. Think about that for a second, because, JASMY, especially when it comes to the secure PC, that's software, but also to devices such as laptops and printers. Again, back to the whole thing on laptops. JASMY with Avita. Yeah, you know where I'm going with this. So when you get more into it, it just blows you away, some of the stuff that you see. And in regards to, like it says, to create a roadmap, tech companies can identify the most critical data use cases in internal operations. Let me say what you want. JASMY is coming out with that new roadmap. This other thing mentions digital twins. Look at this for a second. Hold on. This whole thing of assessing data centers, decreasing energy use, digital twins. I mean, there's so much that's here. All right. Let me take you to this because you guys probably been waiting for this part too. So I want to get into this, and here we go. 2024. We're in 2024. McKinsey's leadership development trends for 2024. Went ahead, got down to this particular part because this part is crucial, absolutely crucial. Let me just double check that you can see this because I kind of wonder sometimes. You can. All right, cool. Didn't want to be on the wrong page. Got a lot of tabs that are up. So what you see here is McKinsey's leadership development trends for 2024 include what, guys? The continued impact of generative AI. Now, JASMY is scaling up. Just like McKinsey mentioned, that companies that are involved in the IoT have to do what? And this dates back to 2015, for crying out loud. They have to scale up, right? JASMY technically has only been, available to the public since 2021. So if we're going to be critical or give credit where credit is due, for them since 2021 and what they're at now, to go to, for instance, a AI blockchain layer 2 solution, that's not bad, right? That's not bad at all. Let me go back. Let me click on that. But it does state here that, yes, this includes impact of generative AI, quick wins with AI implementations, the renewed importance of managers in the organizational hierarchy. McKinsey has also identified the top priorities for CEOs in 2024. So we're here in 2024. Now, I want you guys to understand this. I've been covering a lot in regards to generative AI. I think Casper is a great play. I am talking about Casper with the hard R. I think Caspa is also good too. But we did point out, not the last Casper video, but the one before that, okay, that Casper and IBM are going to lead the charge when it comes to generative AI. But again, look at JASMY, who's capturing what? So many slivers or pieces of the pie when it comes to utility in the many layers of that utility. Like I talked about in the past, Filecoin. JASMY only gets a little piece of that pie, hence why you saw it in the thumbnail of the Filecoin pie, how much that would be worth, right? So this growing impact of generative AI, revolutionizing workplace in unprecedented ways. As we navigate through 2024, the influence of this tech is becoming increasingly evident. Generative AI, with its ability to create new content and ideas, transforming how organizations manage, develop their talent. Look at this for a second. HR functions. I minored in HR. I didn't major in HR, but I minored in it. I know a decent amount about it and so on. I wouldn't mind doing some HR work, but I understand that when it comes to HR, there's a lot of things that involve functionalities. There's a lot of things that are involved in regards to finding the right fit for your organization, that would work with workflow. I mean, say what you want. If you're not hiring the right people for your business, that's going to do what? Affect workflow. So they said that they're identifying relevant use cases for generative AI, such as personalized learning, development programs, talent acquisition, like we mentioned before, and then again, the importance of employee performance. Applications are not only enhancing efficiency, but enabling more personalized and engaging employee experience. However, advent of generative AI is also necessitating changes in roles in the development of new skill sets. Again, just think about this for a second. You create some type of software, especially through an AI blockchain, layer 2 solution, and so on, that is going to help a company through the likes of AI and so on to produce better workflows. That in itself is worth a lot of money. You better believe it. So again, there's so much that's mentioned here in regards to more of the benefits of AI and how it's evident. But again, the priorities. So look at this. And I want you guys to think about this. And I get the whole thing about what Jesse was mentioning from KRI Finance. He was stating specifically you'd like to see more of like, Kunitake Ando. But at the end of the day, Ando don't pump the price, but I get it. It's kind of like even with Quant. Can you imagine if we never saw Gilbert Verdian? He makes a good point. CEOs face a unique set of challenges in 2024. McKinsey, again, big part of this outline, identified 8 key priorities for CEOs this year. I'm not going to get into all of these, but one thing is what it says that's crucial. Leveraging generative AI across business operations and scaling its applications. Again, back to the whole thing of what Jasmine's doing. Don't let anybody who is a content creator say to you, like flood you out of your Jasmine to the point where it's like, well, it's going to a V2. This is not a meme token. Can we repeat that? This is not a meme token, right? Definite case of apples and oranges here. If it was a meme token, I would say, okay, that's a good point. A lot of people don't like that, okay? But you have to keep in mind they're sticking to their white paper. I like that. What's the point of reading a white paper if your devs are not going to stay true to that? You're seeing that. How about this other part? Out competing with technology by fundamentally rewiring organization to extract maximum value from digital transformations. So what you want? Jasmine is definitely transforming by going to this layer 2 or data storage, Web3 cloud solution with Polkadot. This whole thing, navigating energy transition. How many times do you see the whole thing of like what me and Minalagwar and NeoXTrix always talk about, like when it comes to microgrid technology and those patents, Tadashi Morita, right? Boom, there's that. I'm gonna go down to this bottom part, and that is this: driving continuous growth, and especially, I skipped over this part. I didn't mean to do that. Navigating the complexities of a fluctuating macro economy. I mean, think about it. They already got all these connections with the government. So I would recognize that, yes, CEOs implementing AI is not a one-time task. It's understanding the environment, it's understanding where we're at, what year we're in, what kind of technology is out there. But I do agree with this statement. CEOs need to figure out how to scale AI applications across the organization. Jasmine's currently doing that. This involves building the necessary infrastructure, upskilling employees, fostering culture that embraces change. What is Japan doing as we speak? Fostering culture that embraces change. Hence the whole thing of Society 5.0. So I'm not going to get into the bottom part of this. It's worth a read if you want to get into it. But this is the next part I want to get into, and this is why a lot of people feel as though that Jasmine's really, I guess you could say, pumping. If you want to get really into the nitty gritty. It's not because of that whole thing with the AMA. I mean, it's kind of like a little mixed on that. I would say for the most part, according to the polls, I did see a poll about it. And more people were, in approval of what they saw from the AMA compared to not. But this is from a source called followin.io, if you're wondering. Let me double check if you can see it. You can. And it mentions specifically, I think within the last day, Web3 crypto ventures optimistic amid Japan's pending law update. I saw the one from Legrand Commission, so shout out to him as well. But this one shows a little bit more like the nitty gritty. Japan is paving the way for Web3 and crypto initiatives amid an overhaul in its investment laws. The goal is to turbocharge the nation's tech sector. Think about this for a second. This inception was created when? 2015. How do we know that? Former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Again, RIP Shinzo Abe. He said we need to have some American companies invest into Japan and vice versa, right? And to turbocharge Japan's basically tech sector. And so startups. And remember when I did the whole thing with, you know, Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway and so on. And we know that, you know, Mr. Warren Buffett is anti-crypto. But again, it's who he's invested with. It doesn't even matter if he's anti-crypto. You know what I mean? It's what you're tied into. But look at this for a second. This specifically targeted venture capital investments in crypto and Web3 startups. Who's a Web3 startup? I mean, come on, guys. I mean, I don't have to paint the picture for you anymore. We've more than, you know, connected the dots. And now, if anything, you're kind of seeing a representation of where we're taking this to the next level. No, I'm not going to bust out the champagne glasses and celebrate. We're not there yet. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a big milestone. This is the highest that Jasmy's been since the whole thing of, you know, Binance US and being put in that innovation zone. But it is nice to give credit where credit's due. At the core of this development lies the February, and this is the nitty gritty, 2024 revision of the Industrial Competitiveness Enhancement Act, where it says Japan moves to embrace Web3 and crypto startups. Amendment under new deliberation aims to bolster strategic domestic investments, includes expansive long-term tax measures. We talked about all these tax cuts, right? For Japan, especially when it came to capital gains. Night and day difference when it comes to Japan versus the US. But it says for investments and production in strategic sectors such as electric vehicles, steel, semiconductors. Isn't that convenient? Isn't that amazing? So again, you know, there's a lot that's mentioned here, and you can look more into it, but you know, it's pretty darn cool. And I guess I will read this part at least. Financial firms eager to invest amid these regulatory advances, top financial entities like SBI Holdings, how many times did we talk about that? Mr. Genki Oda, are seizing the opportunity. The firm announces plans to launch a $100 billion fund targeting startups in Web3, AI, and the metaverse. And who is all over that is, I would say, like a fat kid on cake? Jasmine. And who's your connector? Genki Oda, right? That's your plug. That's your connect. For one, you already meet the criteria of regulatory clarity. The first to do it in Japan. Jasmine. Genki Oda is part of SBI Japan. Boom. What else is he part of? Well, he's also part of basically the SEC version of Japan, right? You know where we're going with that. We already talked about that numerous times. So that right there is like a trifecta. And then only that Bitcoin. So that's 4 things. That's a big one up. Again, there's so much here. This whole thing. Mitsui Banking Corporation. We've done all these deep dives. All these deep dives. But this legislative financial developments are part of a concerted effort to position Japan as the leading startup hub. Think about why data free flow with trust is so crucial. It is literally the regulatory framework that was introduced not only to Japan, because it's already there, introduced to Europe. And if anything, the blueprint for regulatory clarity moving forward for the United States. But it's not called that here. And if anything, we're still back and forth a little bit. We're not to where we need to be. Here's the whole thing about, you know, the creation of all this. So it's all there for you to look at. Basically, it's like this. In conclusion, I know that's quite a bit to get into, and I get criticism sometimes because, you know, some people want the 15-minute version. I don't work that way. I'm a former school teacher, and that's how it is sometimes. Sometimes I will give you the 15-minute version. Other times I won't. But at the end of the day, keep in mind this. Japan is truly paving the way for Web3 and crypto initiatives amid an overhaul in these investment laws. Very, very true. This goal to turbocharge the nation's tech sector is absolutely crucial, but specifically targeting venture capital does what? It further pounds home the inception, the vision of who? Shinzo Abe back in 2015. This is all coming into fruition, right? But the significance in regards to Jasmy's move towards Web3, or I should say Jasmy, Japan's move to Web3 and crypto, the significance for that in regards to Jasmy, well, there's a few key ones that we need to talk about before we wrap this up. So for one, what's a positive thing about this? There's three of them. Number one, you will see increased funding potential. I think we already proved that. That example that we showed in regards to SBI Holdings, you already have that connection with Jasmy from two main things. SBI Holdings for SBI Japan, and especially when it comes to the whole thing of BitPoint. So that's already there. So that's ready even your governmental plug and connect. The new law allowing these VC firms to hold crypto assets directly opens up significant, come on guys, think about it, significant funding source for Web3 startups like Jasmy. That's amazing. And all the people that fudded Jasmy saying it's not moving, right? Because they are still doing things. They're still building, and they still are building. This could very well lead to accelerated growth and development for the company. What about boosted domestic market? That's a positive thing. Japan's focus on fostering a domestic Web3 ecosystem might create more opportunities, listen to this for a second, for Jasmy to partner with local players and establish itself as a major key player in the market. I think you're already starting to see that happen. Of course, the whole thing of regulatory clarity, they've already been there, or they've already done that, but this amendment in itself, because we're on the topic of it, aims to clarify regulations around Web3, crypto in itself, and it could improve the overall business environment for companies and especially the likes of Jasmy. Now, I'm not just going to be raw Jasmy all the way. I have to address three key concerns in regards to potential challenges. So listen to this for a second. There will always be competition with anything. I don't care who you are and what unique aspect you have, there's competition. So the potential challenges for Jasmy obviously is still more of that competition, but what makes Jasmy stand out is their uniqueness. So this, these increased investments, I should say, in the Web3 space will also lead to more competition for Jasmy. But this whole thing of regulatory uncertainty that I've seen people post on regards to X, keep in mind, if you're the first ones to be regulatory compliant and keep that status in Japan especially, and get that label of the Bitcoin in Japan, I don't think that just goes away overnight. No. And to have those good connections with Genki Oda obviously is a huge catalyst. But while the amendment aims for clarity, keep in mind there's still some uncertainty in regards to the evolving nature of Web3 and more of those crypto regulations, because it might still pose, of course, some challenges. Well, no duh. The third thing I want to get into for a second. What about a focus on specific sectors? Did we not talk about like EV and talk about these sensors in the future and so on? Yeah, we did. So this amendment prioritizes certain strategic sectors, like we pointed out before, like electric vehicles, semiconductors, but it's unclear how much focus will be on Web3 within this specific framework. But again, just because it's not 100% focus, all Jasmy has to do is get a piece of that pie. Now, moving forward, before we completely wrap this up, I know, again, it's quite the deep dive. You got to keep in mind, by actively engaging with regulators and policymakers, like Genki Oda, he is a policymaker, let's face it, Jasmy should participate in the shaping, or I should say reshaping, of regulatory landscape for Japan, and basically Web3 in Japan to ensure its conducive business model, right? They are also going to need to continue on focusing on this unique value proposition. Keep themselves unique with the utility for a reason. People point out to me, and I've done a deep dive about it, they said pillar is literally Jasmy. Very close to it. How well is Pillar doing compared to Jasmine? Not even a drop in the bucket. So connections and partnerships and government, especially in those policy makers, you don't have that with Pillar. That's no bash to Pillar. But, again, as Heisenberg would say, right, dealing with the New York Yankees and Little League. That's a fair comparison. Last but not least, Jasmine always has to prepare for more competition. By developing a strong competitive strategy to stand out specifically in the increasing Web3 crowded space, I think Jasmine can have the one up. They're being recognized a little bit more. They're being taken a little bit more serious. And of course, when you see price action, that definitely helps solidify that. Now, if there's a big dump, things could happen, right? I'm not a fortune teller. But overall, the Japanese government's move with these initiatives, with these laws that have been put into motion, definitely is a move in the step forward for creating, like, for instance, big opportunities and challenges, even for Jasmine. Let's face it, Jasmine's company success will depend on its ability, to navigate the competitive landscape. I mean, no kidding. But my thing is this: by leveraging its unique business model and utility proposition, I think they're going to secure its position as the leader for Web3 moving forward, and especially when it comes to IoT and maybe even finance democracy, because where they're positioned and connected with Japan, these banks that we pointed out, and so on. I know that was quite the outline. That is going to conclude the Jasmine research and deep dive of the night. Know what you have, know why you hold it. The research trumps FUD, obviously, 110%.